Welcome to Al Jazeera. A new suicide bombing in Baghdad has added to the city's horrendous death toll. The attack came just 24 hours after the deadliest campaign of killing since new security measures were imposed 2 months ago. In the latest bombing, a car was rammed into a fuel tank in the district of Qadara. At least 12 people died, dozens more were wounded. Meanwhile, the US Secretary of State touched down in Baghdad for an unannounced brief visit as part of his tour of the Middle East. Arriving in Baghdad, Secretary Gates said he'd like to see faster progress towards security in Iraq. He also warned that America's commitment to military build-up in the country wasn't open-ended. His message came a day after bombings which killed more than 200 people. Sebastian Walker reports.
Another bomb blast in the centre of Iraq's capital. More victims of the country's relentless violence. Police say a suicide bomber was trying to ignite this fuel tanker. It's just the latest setback to a security plan in tatters after Wednesday's devastating attacks. The charred vehicle's a sombre reminder of the previous day's carnage. This neighbourhood suffered a strikingly similar attack just before the crackdown started, and residents are angry it's been allowed to happen again.
We want a solution to this disaster and massacre. What did those poor people do? Who are the targets? We want an answer.
US officials also seem to want answers. Defense Secretary Robert Gates had this message for Iraqi leaders before flying to Baghdad on an unannounced visit.
Frankly, I would like to see faster progress. The Iraqi have to know, as I've said, that this isn't an open-ended commitment. The president has said that our patience is not unlimited.
With violence seemingly on the rise in Baghdad, even Iraqi politicians say they're starting to fear the worst.
We have genuine fears that the security forces would lose credibility, which in return would give rise to more chaos, and we would plunge once again into mayhem.
For some residents of the Iraqi capital, some of those fears are already being realized. Sebastian Walker, Al Jazeera.
Meanwhile, one of the United States' top generals has stressed that security arrangements in Baghdad are still at their early stages. Speaking on Al Jazeera earlier, Brigadier General Robert Holmes warned that more bloodshed was likely while the plan took shape.
As we look at the new security arrangement or the new security plan, it's really only been in effect for just a very short while, and we'll still continue to see the elements of the plan take shape. And General Petraeus has said that, initially there may be violence, more violence, and that may be some of what we're seeing right now.
The US-led coalition in Afghanistan is claiming to have killed 24 Taliban fighters in the south of the country during fighting, which lasted 7 hours. US and Afghan government forces say the latest clashes happened in the southern province of Helmand. The Taliban have denied any of their fighters died in the battle. This comes as the commander of NATO troops in Afghanistan, General Dan McNeill, said his forces are winning the battle against the Taliban. Our correspondent James Bays is in Kabul.
Despite a fortnight that's seen the heaviest casualties for NATO so far this year, General McNeill said that his forces were making progress. He pointed to the recent operation to retake the town of Sangin in Helmand province, and he explained its timing. He said it was carried out following a personal request from President Hamid Karzai. He said he had a logical plan to retake other areas also controlled by the Taliban. He said there were no silver bullets and quick fixes, but he believed eventually NATO would win.
It's a noble cause. We're here at an invitation of a legitimate government. We have a better force. We offer to the people hope, reconstruction, not beheadings, and not tyranny.
He raised no objection to news that President Karzai has been speaking to some Taliban members and trying to persuade them to join the government's side, but he said it would be impossible to negotiate with some, and he singled out the Taliban military leader Mullah Dadullah.
I carry something around with me that I find interesting. It was given to me by a governor of a province in Afghanistan. It came from a bazaar, and it's a propaganda video. And prominently featured in is Mullah Dadullah Lang, but also prominently featured in is probably the most grotesque and vulgar film I've ever seen. It's the beheading of 4 people. It's not like Hollywood. It's not some fellow with big arms and a wide blade sword and one thing. It's a person who slowly unfolds a folding knife and saws 4 heads off. I'm not sure you can deal with people who do those kinds of things.
A spokesman for Mullah Dadullah has responded to those claims. He told Al Jazeera they are propaganda because NATO's losing on the battlefield. In recent days, American officials have suggested the Taliban may be receiving arms from Iran. The Taliban have responded to that too, saying it's untrue and that they buy all their weapons on the open market. James Bays, Al Jazeera, Kabul.
Well, moving to Africa, and a car bomb has exploded inside a base housing hundreds of Ethiopian soldiers on the outskirts of the Somali capital. It comes as 12 people have been killed in fresh fighting between Ethiopian troops and gunmen in Mogadishu. The Somali capital has been rocked by continuing violence since renewed fighting broke out on Tuesday night. Street battles have raged between Ethiopian troops backing the interim government and gunmen opposed to their rule. Nigeria's 2 main opposition parties say they will contest elections on Saturday. Earlier, there had been suggestions they would boycott the presidential and legislative elections. The lead-up to Saturday's vote has been marred by violence and accusations that the process is being rigged. Most of the violence has occurred in the Niger Delta, Africa's biggest oil-producing region, and most of it happens because despite half a century of oil exports, most Nigerians are desperately poor. Andrew Simmons travelled to Ogoniland in the Delta and sent this report.
Billions of dollars of oil money are wasted every year in Nigeria through fires, spillage, robbery and corruption. Even so, there are profits aplenty. But the so-called black gold is no blessing to the people here. They may have faith, but their fortune is blighted by poverty. Under the oil cloud, election issues for them include getting electricity, clean water, eking out a living with enough food to get by. This is a secondary school. On a weekday, it's filled with 700 pupils. On a weekend, this student is here on his own. There are only 3 teachers for the whole school. None of them can teach physics. But Saturday Zozo wants to be an engineer, so he's teaching himself. This is what he comes home to, a shack. His father has died, his mother is destitute, he's depressed. It's so difficult, says his mother Grace. I sit inside and cry every day because I can't help my son with his schooling. Saturday says he's determined to become an engineer.
I have already made up my mind that no matter what it takes me, I will struggle to do it.
But not with any help from the state. Nigeria is the world's biggest offender for failing to put its oil profits back into services such as education.
What is wasted here, if you look at the resource that has been wasted for the past 2 weeks that this fire has been on, if you translate that to amount of cash, it will be more than enough to provide electricity, water, or basic things for the community that is here. We can do better than this.
This is the wasteful, polluted reality of Nigeria's oil wealth. Government documents have recorded up to 7,000 oil spills. That's 1 a day for the past 25 years. Now, many analysts suspect those figures are inaccurate. They think the true number could be up to 10 times higher than that. A short distance away lies the only means of survival for Saturday and his mother Grace, a small patch of land. They're allowed to use it in exchange for Grace labouring elsewhere in an area unaffected by the oil pollution. Saturday may be set upon becoming an engineer, but his chances are slim. The black gold under his feet that pollutes the land nearby won't help him at all. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera in the Niger Delta.
Well, earlier, Darren Jordan spoke to Chief Willie Akinlude, the chairman of Nigeria's ruling People's Democratic Party in Lagos. He asked how so much oil wealth was getting lost when the people needed it so badly.
Well, what happened is that we have a ministry that is in charge of this oil money, and I feel they are doing a very good job. But then, where we have problems, they need to sort them out, and that is what is happening. And it's one of the reasons why we're having an election in Nigeria this time around.